2023 at 4:21 p.m. Eastern Time. Obviously, Claire's been on here a trillion times before. You can go into the description and find all things Miss Lopez. But I believe one of the topics suggested, and we can always bounce around, is the Chinese biolab found in Fresno, California. So to just jump immediately into it,
yeah,
what all is it? What happened? Where is it now?
sure. So I'm pulling off my notes over here. Let me preface this by saying that this incident, this biolab discovery in the Fresno, California area, seems to me just one part of like a full court press by China at the moment in many ways, and we can maybe talk about some of these other things too. The aggression off in the South China Sea, for example, water cannon being used against Philippine boats, vessels in the South China Sea, international waters that China wants to claim for its own. So more aggressive posturing out there in the Far East. This lab, of course, this biolab that we'll talk about here, but also some other things like the Chinese military-aged, military-looking men. We've talked about this before, coming up, from South America through the Darien Gap and on up to and across our southern border. The establishment on the island of Cuba of not just a Chinese intelligence listening post, but apparently now also to be established, a joint military training facility there between the Chinese and the communist Cubans. And then the last thing that we should probably touch on is the arrest of these two Navy sailors this past week who are accused of spying for China and passing over to Chinese intelligence sensitive military secrets. These two are of Chinese descent. They were born and raised in China, then came to the United States, became citizens somehow in the United States, and then not only joined the Navy, but they were allowed to have top secret security clearances. So that on the espionage front, I guess you would say. So, I mean, it seems to me like there are an awful lot of incidents lately in different spheres. The military or the naval out in the South China Sea, espionage with the Navy sailors, and then BW, question mark, for this lab in Fresno, California.
What is I'm just trying to think of the value of it, of them having one in California. I mean, if you want to do bioweapons research, I imagine you'd want to do it in your own secure lab, and then once you had whatever product you were creating, you don't need a forward operating lab. You would just release.
Well, yeah, I mean, I take your point exactly. And this place, as discovered, located in some old broken down warehouse, was a complete sloppy mess, not a functioning professional safety protocol adhering kind of a laboratory at all. What caught my attention is that this lab apparently was in existence since last October 2022. I'm sorry, no, this particular one in Fresno since October of 2022, but the company and its predecessor that this lab belonged to, which originally was called Universal Meditech Inc., was licensed by the state of California on March 20th, 2019. 4 days later, that would be March 24th, 2019, Governor Gavin Newsom's Office of Business and Economic Development allowed a tax credit allocation of $360,000 to Universal Meditech. Oh, and yes, the CEO of Universal Meditech, Zhao Yang Wang. Now, Universal Meditech apparently suffered a fire and subsequently bankruptcy in October of 2022, when it was, I guess, transferred or taken over by Prestige Biotech. Not even registered in the state of California, as I understand it. I think it was registered in Nevada. And that's when this particular facility, this lab, was moved into the warehouse in a town called Reedley, which is a county of Fresno town, a small town, 25,000 people. And oh, by the way, the biotech, Prestige Biotech owner is named Shi-Chin Yao, if I'm pronouncing that right, I hope. Shi-Chin Yao. But that person lives in China. So the reason that this place was discovered apparently in the first place is that some alert, I guess, maybe public health employee of the state of California, not quite sure, but noticed a hose running out of, I guess, the back door, maybe, of this warehouse that shouldn't have been there. And that led to an investigation, which took place in March of this year, 2023. And then the biolab was discovered. Now, March, June, July, as I count it, was at least more than 4 months ago. What was going on during those 4 months that this story never, ever made it to the public media, to the public at large? Investigation, I hope so.
Yeah, probably.
Apparently, that is what was going on. And as I understand it, the reason this came to attention of the public is that some enterprising journalists discovered a court filing, some kind of a court document, and that led them to look into it further.
Yeah, I would imagine you'd want to surveil it and at least see what's going in, what's going out. But it's just odd. In terms of the full court press, what was the water hose? What was for in the South China Sea? Not the hose out of the back door, but you said the fire hose or water hose.
Oh, right. I was talking about a Chinese naval vessel in the South China Sea that turned a water hose against a Philippine vessel there in international waters, trying to intimidate it, push it out of the waters. Not completely clear, but obviously aggressive.
Yeah. So
water cannon maybe is the better way to put it.
Yeah.
Using a water cannon against the Philippine vessel. So
in terms of full court press, and then can you go more into the sailors, the U.S.
Yeah.
Navy?
So and I'd like to come back to the lab because
sure.
There's more to say about that.
Please keep going.
Well, all right. Well, we'll finish with the lab first, then we'll do the sailors, right?
All right, yeah.
So as the media now is getting a hold of details and reporting about this biolab in Fresno County, California, apparently, and there are photographs now online of this place, a complete sloppy mess. There were vials and tubes and petri dishes and bottles of things all over, strewn about the tables, the shelves, the floor of this place. It was in terrible condition, obviously not meeting any kind of, that's a bug flying, any kind of safety protocols at even some kind of a minimal level, apparently when investigated from last March of 2023. But of the things that apparently were discovered and now being reported in the media, discovered there, potentially infectious bacterial and viral agents, including chlamydia, E. coli, streptococcus pneumonia, hepatitis B and C, herpes, rubella, malaria, and a bunch of vials that contained unlabeled fluids. Doesn't sound good. I don't know if the labels were torn off, maybe as staff fled when they realized they had been discovered. I just don't know that answer. But the other thing that was found there were nearly 1,000, over 900 mice. Now, a biolab might be expected to have mice. And I was talking with our friend Li Meng Yan, our virologist friend who fled out of the WHO lab in Hong Kong, in the Hong Kong University campus where that lab was located. She fled back in mid-2020. Well, asking her about this lab, just what does this strike you as? And the first thing she noted was about the mice and the fact that many biolabs, including where she was working in the WHO lab in Hong Kong, have mice for experiments. And she said, though, that they're very expensive, that they may cost as much as the equivalent of $80 a piece. And then, of course, there's the maintenance, the upkeep, the feeding, the caring for these animals. But in this biolab is discovered well over 100, I think it was some number near 200 of the mice were dead already. And others apparently not well taken care of, in poor health, but also discovered to have been genetically modified to become, as they call, humanized mice. That is, with the genetically modified ACE2 receptors. Remember, we've talked about this. ACE2 is a protein enzyme. It's angiotensin converting enzyme that lines the epithelial cells of our respiratory system, and that's the avenue of approach for the coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2. That's how it gets in and latches on to our respiratory system. Well, the mice had been genetically modified, humanized, to have that trait, that ACE2 receptor genetic trait. In other words, to use as for experimentation on infectiousness of SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus. So there was that. And what we were tossing back and forth as I was talking with Li Meng is that she said when a lab, a respectable professional lab buys mice, the first thing they do is make sure that they've separated the male and the female mice. Maybe, just maybe in this case, they didn't spend $80 a piece on 1,000 mice, but perhaps they bought a smaller number and failed to separate the males from the females, and maybe the mice just went wild breeding.
Yeah.
And that's how you got to those huge numbers. Nothing else really makes sense about the mice, but the fact that they were humanized mice with the ACE2 receptor, that's troubling. And unfortunately, after the testing by the California health authorities, the remaining mice did have to be euthanized. So the point here, though, being that this lab was just a sorry mess from beginning to end, including these poor little mice, and not professional, not a professional lab. Speculation, maybe they were creating coronavirus test kits. Maybe there were pregnancy test kits being developed there. Just not certain at all. And there's no real word in the media that I can find yet, anyway, about any people researchers or scientists who might have been, present inside of that biolab. Did they all flee before the authorities got there, knowing that the authorities were coming, tipped off? No word about anybody from inside or how they could be questioned. So that part is missing. But the Chinese connections are pretty clear, not just the ownership, as we mentioned before with the CEO, but also other officials of the company, prestige, that is, like their CPA, certified public accountant, also Chinese national living in China. So a lot of questions still going on with this lab, and what it was for, what they were doing, what the intent was. But bottom line, this was not a certified, it was not regulated, it was not a professional facility in any way, shape, or form.
I still just can't wrap my head around the purpose of doing it in the United States is.
Yeah. I mean, and the question has to be, are there others like this?
Probably.
How many?
Yeah.
Where are they? what are they really doing with all these different pathogens, bacterial and viral agents, strewn about the place? What was that for? Um, just more questions now than we have answers, but not good.
When you said a full court press, is that so? Like, one thing we've obviously talked about a million times is unrestricted warfare, and really what China's been doing for decades.
Yeah.
How is it a full court press in relation to that? Has it been jumped up a notch, or is it just more?
I mean, what I mean is the volume and the variety of the kinds of the offensive, right? So I talked about those, Chinese naval vessels acting aggressively in the South China Sea. We've got these overflights of Taiwan by Chinese fighter jets constantly. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, we mentioned the migrants of possible Chinese special forces, so-called jungle tigers, coming on up, through Central America, Mexico, and across and in the U.S. border into the United States. So that's migration, illegal. And then we've got the biolab that we just talked about. There we're in the territory of biological warfare, maybe. And then finally we'll get to these Navy sailors just recently arrested. And there you've got traditional kinds of espionage. So look at the variety of the kinds of attacks. Traditional military, naval out in the South China Sea, biological warfare with the biolab, espionage with the Navy sailors, migration not usually thought of maybe as an unrestricted category of warfare, but there it is. That's what I mean. It's not just the variety of the kinds of attacks that we may not, as Westerners, Americans even, necessarily have thought about previously as part of warfare, but you read Unrestricted Warfare, the Chinese military manual, and it's all in there. Yeah, any kind of these, these various types of activities, assaults, attacks, really, part of unrestricted warfare. And then the different variety, and then I would say the pace of the attacks, the simultaneousness of all these things happening kind of at once, and it seems to be very much in a ramped up manner. So that's why I called it a full court press.
Okay, so same old unrestricted warfare, but it's been dialed up in relation to what's been going on for the past several months. So then, big picture, what is that? Is it? Are we looking at the early pre-days of war? Is this going to flood into Taiwan?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The Chinese regime, the Chinese Communist Party regime of Beijing, literally openly
they've
declared
been at war with
war
us,
against us in May of 2019 in an issue of the Xinhua CCP propaganda media outlet online. So in their minds, they've been at war with us for quite a while. But again, because our people, even our military, our national security people, maybe have never even read Unrestricted Warfare, I don't know, but certainly seem not to have digested what it means. They may not even yet recognize any one or all of these different things as part of warfare that's already going on. We are at war with China right now. It's not always kinetic. In the South China Sea or the overflights over Taiwan, yes, that's kinetic, that's military. But these other things that we're talking about, the illegal migration, the jungle tigers, the Navy sailors arrested for accused of espionage, the biolab, those are different categories. But we need to begin thinking about those as warfare, because that's how the Chinese Communist Party thinks of them.
Well, sure, and that's how I think you and I have talked about it, and so General Spalding refers to it. But I guess
also,
maybe more, and I guess so for the traditional person who's not plugged into it all the time, are we gearing up for kinetic war?
Can I read you a short paragraph
Yeah.
from Unrestricted Warfare? You just reminded me of this. This paragraph is on the page that precedes the page in the book that has that whole long list of different categories of warfare. You know, the one that says atomic warfare, diplomatic warfare, financial warfare, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so the page before that has this paragraph. So listen. The American military is naturally inadequately prepared to deal with this type of enemy psychologically, in terms or measures, and especially as regards military thinking and the methods of operation derived from this. This is because they have never taken into consideration, and have even refused to consider means that are contrary to tradition, and to select measures of operation other than military means. This is what General Spaulding understands so well and has talked about, as you say, as you referenced. We just don't think like they think.
So then that's it. So what are we going to see then? So let's look at the things that we are starting to see apparent, because all the things of unrestricted warfare are things you do because they're asymmetric and they don't necessarily lend themselves to the idea of, it's not your classical Russia invading a sovereign nation.
Yeah, troops, tanks, ships, and planes. Yeah.
But
although it could get to that, and already is in some measure in the East China Sea, East Asia area of operations.
That is the inevitable end. Like, the warfare will eventually escalate to that if you were to go take physical area. Is that what we're going to, or is that what we are already seeing with flyovers of Taiwan?
Well, certainly there are all kinds of measures being directed at Taiwan right now. You in the audience may know that Taiwan will have presidential elections next year in 2024. The current President Tsai is ineligible to run again. And so a candidate from her party, his anglicized name is William Lai, L-A-I, I think it is, Lai, is running on behalf of the governing party right now of Taiwan. But at the same time, there's a competing party, which is the Kuomintang party, and that is the successor or the descendant party from the original forces of Chiang Kai-shek, who, of course, as we know, fled the Chinese mainland as Mao Zedong and the communists were taking over in 1949. And they went to Taiwan. And this party, the Kuomintang party, is the lineal descendant of those people. But what's important to notice here is that let's look at, again, another means of warfare. It's propaganda warfare. It's infiltration warfare, co-option. And the Kuomintang party in Taiwan might be surprising to those, watching and listening, but it's, to me at least, surprisingly sympathetic to reaching some kind of accommodation with the Chinese Communist Party. So that's another way of infiltration and suborning of Taiwan from the inside. Never mind cyber assaults, cyber threats. So I mean, there are many ways for an attack against Taiwan to, I guess, accelerate. It's already taking place. Of course, for example, we saw the blockade of China. I think that was earlier this year, right? When, or before the time when then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, when she was still Speaker, and I'm sorry, she was Speaker. She was Speaker of the House. I think it goes back to last year, as a matter of fact, late, probably 2022. Anyway, she took a trip. She took a trip over to Taiwan, and of course, the Chinese Communist Party, lost their minds over this. And remember, they formed a blockade around the island of Taiwan. Now, Taiwan has a number of lesser islands around it too, but the mainland, the main island of Taiwan was surrounded. One way of demonstrating again, how an attack against Taiwan could be conducted, because Taiwan depends nearly 100% on imports of food and fuel for its survival. And so that was one way. Now, William, as I'm calling him, Lai, the candidate for the presidency in the race in Taiwan next year, is due to visit the United States. Well, they're losing their minds again. So it's this kind of constant pressure coming from all kinds of different directions, that is the characteristic, the defining characteristic of the war phase, maybe, that we're in right now. But never mistake, it is war right now. It's just there are different phases of it, and different tactics being trotted out.
Is China present in Niger?
China has a presence in West Africa, certainly. Niger is one of those places, and in particular, because a lot of these countries, you can think of places like Mali, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Gabon, other places, have rich deposits of scarce minerals, the kind of minerals that are needed, like cobalt, like lithium, to make electric batteries that could go into electric vehicles. And China wants to dominate that market. Afghanistan also, by the way, is quite rich in these kinds of minerals. And so it is, China is moving in to all of these places. But it's not to help out or, accelerate the development of these countries and their people. It's to gain control over strategic assets like these minerals.
Doesn't it more and more seem like we're kind of in another Cold War? Ukraine, Taiwan, Niger, Russia, China, America, kind of proxies.
Well, some of the wars already are hot, obviously, yeah. Ukraine. Niger, of course, which just suffered a military coup d'etat, removing the president. And now you've got the African nation coalition called ECOWAS, which is Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, making noises, talking mostly, so far as I can see, about compelling Niger to return its proper president to office and remove the coup plotters. These are kinetic. I mean, these places are, kinetic warfare. China, as we've said again, in the East Asia region, kinetic as well sometimes. But these other kinds of activities, the Belt and Road Initiative, for example, which is all over the Western Hemisphere, Latin America and the Caribbean, that is another kind of projection of power and influence. In this case, would be trade and commercial influence. And then you've got traditional espionage, the Navy sailors, biological warfare with this lab in Fresno, California, and we haven't mentioned it, but how about chemical warfare, flooding America with fentanyl that kills something around over 100,000 Americans per year. That's serious warfare. Killing that many Americans every single year with chemical warfare, that is the synthetic opioid fentanyl, without deploying a single troop, tank, ship, or plane.
So then, at what point, if there is a point, do we kind of stop bullshitting around and just call it what it is, and call it war, and meet them kinetically? Is that the inevitable end?
This is part of why General Spaulding retired from the Air Force. He could not get this concept through to the military command, to the Pentagon, to the Department of Defense, and he thought he could do a better job, and he probably is, on the outside of the Pentagon Department of Defense with his 2 books that he's written so far. I've read both of them. Excellent. But he understands this. But getting through to those who are either already in the category of elite capture, we've talked about that before, or just thoroughly and completely compromised, like the current occupant of the White House and his family, or other senior level politicians, or companies, firms, Wall Street, public health, the NIH, the NIAID, the CDC, the FDA. We could go on and on. Entertainment, Hollywood, media, social media, sports. The only way it can happen that we stand up to this offensive, this unrestricted warfare from China, from the Chinese Communist Party, is different leadership, first and foremost, in Washington, D.C., and then some of those other areas, institutions of our society, can also be moved in the right direction, but not now.
I guess I tend to believe that there's complicity. I think a lot of people are thick-headed and arrogant, but it's the very topic or idea of unrestricted warfare. It's not a difficult thing to grasp. It takes 5 minutes to wrap your head around. So when you look at someone like General Spalding that cannot get the White House or the Pentagon or DOD or whatever to shift their thinking,
it's not so easy. It really isn't.
Okay.
When you've got, fixed ideation, built on perhaps decades of training, indoctrination, even experience, it's pretty hard, maybe nigh on to impossible, to shift that thinking. And worse yet, when some of those leading figures are co-opted, themselves suborned by various methods to the CCP, the PLA.
Then maybe it is that. I guess I just tend to look at it as...
No, to logical people like you and me and our listeners, our viewers, this seems like, well, duh. This is what they're doing. This is what we need to do to counter it. Let's go.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it is when the enemy has already infiltrated and co-opted so many of the top levels of our societal institutions, the ones I just named before.
So then where does this realistically go? Does it go kinetic, or does it just go out not with a bang, but just a fizzle? Just continued
Well,
corruption,
as far as
subversion?
Taiwan is concerned, it very well could go kinetic.
I mean America
and certainly
v.
in the
China.
window of time, when the CCP views leadership in Washington, D.C. to be weak, co-opted, pile of limp spaghetti.
Yeah.
That could very well go kinetic there.
Yeah.
Now we've seen just recently, again, the past week, joint exercises, naval exercises of the Chinese and the Russians off the Aleutian Islands, and even, I think, as I heard, across territorial boundaries up by Alaska. So there again, pushing the boundaries, pushing. A miscalculation could make it go kinetic very quickly at some point, or they could continue, the CCP could continue with what has been so successful up until now, which is the unrestricted warfare, full panoply of different kinds of warfare and measures that have so rotted our societal institutions to the core sometimes.
I don't know if I really have a positive spin on any of this. It might be because it's the end of the week and my brain's cooked, but that kind of...
I'm with you, and I'm sorry to, top off the week here with, this load of negativity, but that it is what it is. And, the thing that we have to take from this, though, is that thanks to you, thanks to other radio shows and TV programs, videos and documentaries like ours at defendtheborder.org, and films such as Sound of Freedom in the theaters nowadays, our own documentary film at defendtheborder.org, Death County and the River of Broken Dreams. All of this, I think, is contributing in a very good and positive way to helping the American people to see and understand things that just weren't apparent to them much before this. So that's a good thing. You look at it that way.
Okay, I will try to. But Miss Lopez, I know this is a shorter episode, so let's wrap this one up. And I look forward to getting back to our regularly scheduled programming on Thursdays.
Sounds good to me. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tommy.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please go into the description. Please go follow Claire on Twitter. Please go check out our writing. Please go check out the website. And as always, thank you for your time.